I'm ready.
No spoilers.
True. If you haven't watched it by now, something's wrong with you.
Yeah, but still.
If you haven't watched it by now, you're never watching it. Probably have time to share it into the group. Alright, let's do it. G'day guys, we are live. Welcome once again to the Tripod. This week we'll be breaking down round 11 in the NRL. If you've been following us for a while, you would have known we had one of our best weeks of the season last week, going 24 wins, 8 losses, as well as cashing, I think, 1 or maybe even 2 multis. Cheers, mate. You're drinking the beer over there, I see. Have a guess what's in this cup. Don't say
what
something sick.
What is it?
It's alcoholic hot chocolate. Delicious. It's getting chilly, mate. It's getting cold.
It is getting chilly. It's that time of year. We had a great round last week, but also, as we all know, it's Origin time of year, so we want to let you guys know we could talk about Origin for hours, and as two people who, are punting on nearly every game, watching every game, we have our own thoughts, I guess, on who the strongest sides would be. We are staunch Queensland fans, but if you followed our Origin tips, we've bet on and against our state, and we've had a lot of success actually with our Origin bets and predicting how the games are going to go. So we're actually going to do our dedicated pod, maybe only like 15 minutes, but we're both going to pick basically what we think is our strongest Queensland side that we would want, each of us, and then debate if we've got any differences, and then pick basically our most fearful New South Wales squad. That's very contentious in terms of who should be in that side and where loyalty comes into play. So that's going to be tomorrow, 5 p.m. So 5 p.m. Queensland, New South Wales, East Coast time.
Friday.
So an hour
Friday,
before
right?
the kickoffs. Sorry, Friday. Friday we're going to do it. So an hour before the kickoff on Friday. And you guys can join in the discussion as well. We'll give you time to watch that. It shouldn't take too long, but we thought we'll separate that and do it a whole pod just on Origin chat.
Yep.
But the theme will be for round 11 will be certain players that are in the fray and they're going to need to have a big performance. And then you also got to wonder about some players who know their name will be read out on Sunday or Monday, whether they're just trying to get through the game. But before we get into round...
Tough thing to get used to, being an underdog and knowing that whatever team we pick, we will be significant underdogs for the series, that's for sure. I mean, we're not used to... certainly not used to being underdogs 2 years in a row, that's for sure.
Yeah, and I mean, we'll talk way more about Origin. I mean, even last year, obviously New South Wales got that win, but it was quite a close series if you think about game 2. But we'll talk a lot about more about Origin on Friday. The other, big world event that happened that we want to touch on
Here we go.
was the Game of Thrones. No, sorry, that still could be a while away, although don't tell the missus that because then I'll be in trouble. But the Game of Thrones finale now, look, everyone seems to be a TV critic these days, so we're not going to sit here and pretend to be TV critics. And don't worry, I'm not going to spoil. No spoilers here on the pod. Okay. Alex has sworn to not spoil. We just want to talk about it from a betting perspective because it is quite interesting. It's a new phenomenon of betting on TV shows, and there's been betting on reality TV, but betting on, obviously a pre-filmed drama series is quite unprecedented. And, I personally tried to avoid, there were lots of posts in our group each week. There were betting markets on who's going to die or, certain events that are going to happen in the show, who's going to end up ruling. And I avoided that because for me, it's like I actually really enjoy the show. And I feel like often the odds are going to spoil it because the odds are actually building in any spoiler information that's out in the ether.
100%.
And And so I kind of avoided it. Where if you're watching a show like MasterChef or bloody The Bachelor and your missus makes you watch it and you want to bet on it to make it a bit more entertaining, I can understand that. For Game of Thrones, if you're already entertained by it, you probably didn't need to bet on it. But if people didn't love it that much, maybe betting on it made it exciting for them. But my other thing I would say is just be very wary, because the bookies also had access to all that spoiler information. And just for an example, the finale was obviously Sunday in America, Monday here. And BetEasy put a list of events that would happen in the finale. The only winning event was paying $1.05, and they had a lot of other events that would happen in the finale, which were very similar to what happened, but they put extra little details in there that made it lose. And someone's thinking, oh, I've read a spoiler on Reddit. I know who's going to kill so-and-so. And I'm seeing here I can get, $1.90 on that person to kill them. Oh, and only one other thing has to happen. That's got to be good value. But they knew that as well, and they built it in. So I guess my ultimate point to take away is the bookies are bad. And even with known information, betting on TV shows where the event has happened, the bookies don't give away money for free, and they can be pretty dirty, honestly, with a lot of those markets.
Oh, 100%. And just to kind of echo your points about the value, I guess, and we say this all the time about certain markets, whether it be in sports or, entertainment or whatever you're betting on. Generally, if there's only a yes or there's only a no, generally it's probably not value. Like it's $1.05 for the Iron Throne to be destroyed. You can't go and get $8 on it for.
Congratulations, mate! You've gone about 30 seconds into his point with a spoiler.
Fuck off! It's been out for days now. If you haven't watched Game of Thrones by now, then too fucking bad. But anyway, there's no yes and no markets, and we say that all the time in sports and stuff. That you want to be able to see that in order to be able to gauge whether it's actually value. Because one side could be the yes at $1.50. And there's no option to choose the no, so you have no idea.
Yeah, and that is in sport and in TV or anything. Anytime they list this certain event to transpire, or in a footy game, like a player, even like anytime try scorer, they should offer the no on every player. Because if they're telling you that a player is like $1.50 anytime try scorer, they should be willing to take money on the no at $2.50. Otherwise, there's no way they can kind of prove they're not ripping you off. And so often, with a one-sided market, they are ripping you off. But I think we can get into footy, but I just thought the other real parallel with Game of Thrones was there's obviously been a lot of criticism about it, and I actually thought I could see parallels between Season 8 of Game of Thrones and Season 5 of the pod. It's like when you've been winning at 60% or better every season, people just expect greatness and they expect everything to be amazing, and then it's just hard. If you're anything less than that, you're going to get a lot of criticism. And I thought Game of Thrones is such a great TV show, like kind of the equivalent of winning at 60%. You do anything less than that, you get a lot of criticism. But at the end of the day, we're still watching. And for the people who are tuning into this, they're still listening to the pod, thankfully. And we thank you guys for joining us every week.
I'll tell you one thing. A lot of people were saying Season 6 of Game of Thrones was rushed. I don't think anything we've done this season is rushed. We take fucking hours to comb through these fucking best bets. So that's one parallel that I'd say we probably can't draw. Let me just move this graphic so it's not covering your head. First up, on Thursday night, we got the Eels laying 6 points at their new home stadium against the Panthers. 37.5 is the total. Wow, the Panthers have been just absolutely diabolical. Lost by 20 points against the Warriors last week once again. And what's that? 2 wins on the season for the Panthers, I believe, which is certainly not what we thought at the start of the season. I think most people had high hopes for them, hopes of finishing top 4, etc. And then the Eels pretty much lost a game that I really did think that they were going to win. Once they got it to 10-6, it looked like they were getting the upper hand on the Cowboys there, and then just kind of faded in that second half. So props to the Cowboys for kind of hanging in there. But look, let me just say this. The Eels have been playing the better out of the 2 teams this season, that's for sure. But the talent there is certainly not up to par of the Panthers. Last week we went against the Panthers. I know we've been copping shit for ages for going against the Panthers this season. Last week we finally, for betting on the Panthers. Last week we finally went against them. They got crushed by the Warriors. I think we won 7 best bets on that one. But now this line, creeping up to over 6 points, is just getting too much. I understand Maloney is out. He's suspended. You get Regan Campbell-Gillard back. I understand that, the Eels have been playing better footy than the Panthers. But this, I know I say it every single week, this is a do or die spot for the Panthers, but I really just do think that the line has forced my hand here where I have to take the Panthers, and that's what we're going to do.
Yeah, I mean, pre-season, we definitely looked at this Panther squad, said that's a top 4 quality roster, and Ivan Cleary did such a good job last year with West. He comes into a side with more talent, with his own son, so he's kind of got your junior coach on the field with the players. But we were wary. We didn't bet on the Panthers much in the first month of the season. They had all the off-field dramas and distractions, and we knew that could be the case. But after about a month of disappointing footy, there were a few rounds in there from, say, 5 to 8 or whatever. But we did back the Panthers and expected them to show up, and they did let us down a lot more often than not. And then we wisely went against them last week and cleaned up 7-0 in our best bets. We were all over the Warriors. Now in this one, I didn't really set out to be on Penrith, but as you say, over a converted try now, Eels 2 from 2 at Bankwest Stadium, and geez, they get amped, and it hasn't been close in their 2 games, and people are talking about how the Eels aren't taking that on the road. So we know we're getting a big game out of the Eels. We also know a guy like Witeni Zalesniak's been dropped as well for the Panthers. I tell you what, New Zealand doesn't beat Australia last year without the way he was playing, and he was listed in the Golden Boot shortlist for best player in the world, and now he can't even, get a jersey at Panthers. They are in turmoil, but I do wonder if Maloney out could actually freshen up this side, because I really like Jerome Luai, and it's an opportunity for Cleary. I think he's on the outer for Origin, but we'll talk more about Origin on Friday. But it's an opportunity for him to steer them around. There's still enough talent there that with this amount of points, no team is just a lame duck for a whole season. So the Panthers will turn it around. It's only a matter of when. And this line is enough for us to have faith that they show up and compete in this one.
Indeed. Before I get to the best bets, we try and get to as many questions as we can. James is asking if Sivo's back for the Eels. He is back. Doesn't change an awful lot for us. I mean, wingers we usually say are worth about half a point max, and Sivo's certainly not one of the best wingers in the comp. Someone's asking over 37.5 or over or under. That's just stating the total for the game at the top there. Underneath those are all the best bets. And yes, Nick, you may fade us, but you would have gone 8 and 24 last week. First up, we've got Panthers plus 7.5. We're taking this week at $1.80. That one's on Sportsbet. We'll take Panthers plus 4 points in the first half and in the second half. They're both $1.80 on BetEasy. We'll take the Panthers team total over 14.5 points. That one's $1.98 on BetEasy. And we're going to take the Eels not to score 3 unanswered tries. That one's $1.80 on Bet365. Moving on to the early Friday game, we've got Manly laying 6 points against the Titans. 43.5 is the total, so a fairly high total and a surprisingly high total for a Manly team that has been playing well of late, obviously beating the Sharks there on the late game Sunday, but the defense has been fairly good. Look, now I look at this and this is saying that Manly is significant. This line is telling me that Manly is a significantly better team than the Titans. I don't know if you can even make that argument. I think you can make an argument that these two teams are fairly even. I understand the Titans have been playing pretty woeful of late, but let's not forget they were 16-0 up against the Dogs last week. One more try and they go on and probably win that game by 30 plus. So we're getting a little bit of extra line value there for a game that they probably should have won and won going away, and they end up losing. And Manly puts up probably one of their better performances of the season to beat the Sharks there on Sunday. But let's not forget that Cherry Evans is still out, Tommy Turbo's still out. This isn't a fully strength Manly side. I still think the Titans can hang, and I think that they can possibly cause an outright upset. I think 6 points, and especially 6.5 that we got, is too many.
Yeah, once again, I didn't want to bet on the Titans last week. If you saw our recap on Sunday, I said I'm sick to death of the Titans. I've said that 2 weeks in a row. They're pea-hearts, and they've been playing far worse than Manly. If you look at the form, Manly has won 6 of the last 8 games, which is pretty remarkable when you speak about Cherry Evans being out. But the other injuries they've had along the way, 5 straight matches, Manly played a different combination in the halves, which is pretty crazy. And yet they've won 6 of their last 8. The Titans have won 2 of their last 10, 2 all year. And yet, I still feel once again with this line, over a converted try, I have to still believe that the Titans can compete. And it's funny, Manly's won a lot of these games as an underdog, and that's their style with Des, and they're better than decent defensively. They've been awesome, and I thought last week was another one of their best defensive performances. The amount of repeat sets that Sharks had, Sharks got 10 penalties in a row. They forced dropouts. There were errors. It was amazing defense by Manly, honestly. And so their defense is great, but they're a good underdog where if you get them catching points, they can keep it close. As a favourite, I don't know if they necessarily should be a -6.5 favourite. And for the Titans, they've shown that they don't deserve to be favoured against many teams, and they were favourites at home against Dogs and couldn't get it done. But as an underdog, you know, can they come in here and fight? I think they can. One other interesting wrinkle, we went to a Bucks party last year, and the Buck is a massive league fan, and we went to a Queensland Cup game, you know, reserve grade game during the day, and it was Ipswich Jets versus the Tweed Heads. And we grew up closer to Ipswich, and we all bet money on Ipswich for the Buck. And then we go, oh shit, the Titans dropped 5 players this weekend. They're all playing for Tweed. A couple of those names, Brendan Elliott, Kane Elgee.
Yep.
So those Titans rejects are now key players for Manly. So there'll be a bit of feeling there. But I still ultimately think with Shannon Boyd and Hipgrave back into this Titans side as well, and they should have the disparity in the halves with Roberts and Taylor. I know those guys have been underperforming, but I'll say it again. I'm giving them one more shot. We take the Titans.
I will tell you exactly how I lost that bet on that fucking game. The team that we bet on, I can't even remember, was up 6 points very, very late. And the other team scores a try in the dying seconds. Or maybe it was like with 1 minute to go or whatever. They kick the conversion, the game's tied. What do they do off the fucking kickoff? It doesn't go 10 metres, or it goes out on the full.
Yeah, they went deliberate short kickoff. If you've ever seen Ippy Jets playing the Q Cup, they do all kind of crazy shit. Pretty entertaining to watch. And they went short kickoff in a tied game with a minute left, and the other team got a penalty and kicked a goal from halfway after the siren. Good time.
I lost $1,000. Very fun. All right, we've got 4 best bets on this one. We're taking the Titans plus 6.5 points. First of all, that one's $1.90 on Ladbrokes. Once again, we're going to take the Titans plus 4 points in the first half and in the second half. They're both on BetEasy, both $1.80. And we're going to take Manly team total under 24.5 points. You can find that one at $1.80 on Neds, Lads, and Bet365. Friday night game, we've got the Knights plus 6.5 points against the Roosters. Hosting the Roosters, 41.5 is the total. Interesting game for me. Jacob sort of talked to me around...
Hey, before you break it down, can we just take a time out? Because Cooper Cronk retired.
True.
So we could, speak about Cooper Cronk for a second. Can I ask you a question?
Go.
Let me get this right. If the Roosters don't turf out Mitchell Pearce last year and bring in Cronk, do you think the Roosters would have still won the comp in 2018?
Probably, yes.
I agree. I actually still think they win the comp. And you look, Cooper Cronk did nothing in the grand final, had like the fractured scapula. And that is not to take anything away from Cronk, because I want to share a memory of Cooper Cronk, and he's been an absolutely amazing stalwart of the game. But just the fact that the Roosters were so loaded, and we were onto it, and we backed the Roosters all year last year and even tipped them in the grand final, knowing Cronk was injured. But you can share any thought you have about Cooper Cronk as well. But my memory is we were at the 2012 Origin Game 2, a famous game actually in Sydney where the stadium was completely blue and where I think Gallen had 800 metres and New South Wales got the win. But my memory is when Cooper Cronk got sin-binned for, I think, barging Todd Carney off the ball, saving a try. Queensland ends up holding them out in that period when he's in the bin. And it was like a 4-point game with like 20 to go. Cooper Cronk comes back on the field, and it was a Queensland scrum. And he basically high fives every single one of his teammates as he runs across the field and says to every single one of them, "I'm back. We're going to win this." And I get chills just thinking about that. When he came back on, he looked every man in the eye as he ran back onto the field and said, "We're going to win this." And for me, that was Cronk, the ultimate competitor and just the ultimate professional. He'll never let you down in your team. And maybe I'm underselling the impact he's had from that point of view to the Roosters culture. That's obviously not only won them the comp last year, but gives them a great chance to repeat this year too.
Yeah, fair enough. I'm just seeing some comments flowing in, and I guess someone's mentioning that if you take out Cronk, put Pearce back in there, is Cronk still on that Storm side for the grand final? And if so, do they? No,
I just mean from Mitchell Pearce's point of view, he's got to go to bed. Yeah, I'd like to think that he's matured a bit.
Much better this year than last year.
Does Mitchell Pearce just go to bed thinking, if they hadn't moved me on, I could have won the comp with the Roosters last year? Mitchell Pearce, on a team that has Ponga, has got 3 Dally M votes in 4 consecutive matches. That's pretty insane in a month of footy to be the man of the match 4 times in a row. That segues obviously into this game, which to me is the game of the round, and I'll let you share your breakdown first.
Game of the round. Yeah, I'd probably agree. Actually, I'd put Warriors-Broncos up there just for the Nicarima factor. But anyway, very, very interesting game. It reminds me a lot about the Broncos hosting the Roosters last week, which was one of our favourite games of the round, if not our favourite game of the round. Pretty much everything is the same. You got the Knights at home. Broncos were at home last week. You have a very similar line, +6.5, +7.5, sitting at around that sort of number. I guess the difference here is you look at the teams, essentially, and you look at our power ratings. I would probably say that I'd have, Broncos a smidge, the tiniest smidge above Knights after last week, but very, very similar teams. In terms of home field, we say that the Broncos probably have, one of the stronger home fields in the comp. We say that the Knights also have one of the stronger home fields in the comp, especially when they're playing well. And they are playing well. They've won 4 on the trot. The fans are turning out, and they're going to be absolutely pumped for this one. The one thing that I guess goes against is the difference between last week and this week is that it was a bit of a letdown spot for the Roosters. They'd won a few on the trot, and then they had to go to Brisbane to play this one. But now they're coming off a loss, and I expect the Roosters to be fairly motivated for this one. However, the Knights, as we said, have been playing very, very good football, and at home in front of a raucous crowd should be able to keep this one close enough. And I guess that's a big if, because when the Roosters get on a roll, they can get on a roll. But some of them may be looking forward to Origin, that kind of stuff, trying to keep healthy. So I trust the Knights to do a good job here at home.
Yeah, this game did remind me exactly of the Broncos last week, and we didn't hesitate. We took the Broncos +6.5. I think we even got a 7.5 for a few cents less. And obviously that was the right side to be on. They got the outright victory. But as you kind of alluded to, the Roosters played in Brisbane on a Sunday, flew home, flew back, played again on a Friday. This time they get a week prep. They're off a loss, and they've only got to go to Newcastle, and they've got Boyd Cordner and Tupou back.
Correct.
Now the Knights are playing great footy, and I agree also the Knights and the Broncos are pretty evenly matched teams, like different style of sides, but in terms of how we would rate sides right now, they're both playing really good footy, and they're both pretty equivalent. When you think about the Roosters, you think about Teddy, and I can't wait for the fullback matchup in this. It's an Origin preview for sure, in Ponga versus Teddy. But Teddy, Latrell, Keary, throw Cronk in there. But what's underrated about the Roosters, even though they won the comp, is it's their forward pack is where it starts. And with Cordner back, you've got guys like Takiaho, Waria Hargraves. Obviously, they added Crichton. He's been fairly quiet this year, but again, he'll probably get a blue jersey.
Probably.
That is where this game will be decided. Can the Knights match the Roosters forward pack? Because if you go back to the previous 4 wins, the Knights have won the battle in the middle of the field, which allows Ponga and Pearce to play off that. That is the key. But at home, we do believe that there's just enough value once again with the underdog, with this number of points. To me, it jumps out as the most entertaining match of the round, and I think it will be within a converted try.
And I know you mentioned earlier 7.5. We didn't grab that yet. We've taken 3 bets as of now. We've got the Knights +4 points in the first half and in the second half. Those are $1.85 on BetEasy. And we're also taking Knights to win a half. It's $1.80 on BetEasy as well. Moving on to the Saturday early games, we've got the Raiders laying 7.5 points in Canberra against the Cowboys. 41.5 is the total. I do have a lean to the Cowboys in this one. Jacob's talked me off any best bets as of now because, to be honest, we probably think that money may flow for the Raiders, and at 7.5, you're not giving up too much because the line, it could easily tick to 8, and if you see it going down towards 6, then you can always grab Cowboys. But I do think it's a good spot for the Cows. They got that win. They come from behind. 10-6 down, get a gritty win against the Eels, who honestly haven't been playing bad football. So they've got a little bit of confidence now. And to be honest, the Cows have had a pretty shitty season. But after that win, you've still got to think, okay, we still are an outside chance of making the 8. This is more of a bet on the Cows than against the Raiders, because I understand, I said this at the start of the season, that Raiders were one of the teams that I was very high on, and they've showed that. They've been very, very solid. They've shown week in, week out that they are playing top 4 football. And they showed that again against the Rabbits last week, and we're pretty unlucky not to get a win there. But that was a brutal game. That was a tough game against the Rabbits. And now you turn around, you come back home to Canberra in what you think is probably going to be a pretty easy game against the Cowboys side. But let's not forget, the Cowboys got trounced by the Raiders earlier on in the season, 30-12 in round 4. They're not going to forget that. I think that the distance between these two teams in terms of talent is probably not what this 7.5 line suggests. And I think people are really still thinking about this Cowboys side with Taumalolo out. When he was out, they were horrible. Since he's been back, they've been very, very good, and that forward pack has actually bullied teams, and I think they can probably do the same here. I think the Cowboys can win the forward battle in this game. because their outside backs are certainly worse. And if they can, I think they can keep it close enough.
So were they very, very good at Suncorp Stadium against the Bunnies? Because I sat next to you and we were drinking away our sorrows, and they weren't very, very good, and neither was Tamalolo.
That was the one game where he didn't have 200 plus meters.
And one of our strengths as the pod is that we both look at the games independently and then come together, and usually we agree because we both, have I would say a successful approach to handicapping, but we don't always agree. And for me, like the way the Cowboys played against the Bunnies compared to how the Raiders played against them shows there is a gap. Like you're saying 7.5 line in this game represents too big of a gap between these teams. But I think if they played on a neutral venue, that line would have to be -5.5 to the Raiders. I think if you made that line any, 4 or lower, it's too low. The Raiders get back Joe Tapine. That's going to help. Kotrick to right centre worked really well. And if you want to talk about Origin, they need a right centre. I actually think he's the deadliest. He is a beast. He's a weapon. Cowboys relatively unchanged. Hampton out. Gideon Geller-Mosby, if I'm saying that correct, is on the wing there. Maguire in the reserves does give them the possibility, but as a Queenslander, I trust Maguire will do a job in Origin. I don't want him to risk that calf. We'll see. Of course, when you have a good player in the reserves and you're betting on that team, it's like all upside. If they're included, it's even better. But I just see the Raiders off back-to-back losses, but they lost by a try or less to the Roosters and the Bunnies. This will be a game at home where I think they are just too good. I just don't, believe enough in the Cows, especially if they were to get behind. I think they'll find it very hard to score points against the Raiders. And ultimately, that's why we have bet on the unders in this game, haven't we?
We have, yeah. We've taken under 7.5 tries for now. That's $1.81 on Sportsbet in the alternate tries market. You get a few extra cents there. But, once again, because the Cowboys have struggled to put on points, this Raiders defense has been very solid, and it's going to be pretty frigid down there in Canberra. So we're taking under 7.5 tries for that one. We'll just move that and make it a little bit bigger. Next up, we've got Warriors laying 1.5 points against the Broncos in Auckland. 39.5 is the total. For me, I know you said that the Knights Roosters is the game that you're probably most looking forward to, and it probably will be the most entertaining game. This is very, very interesting. I mean, the Broncos, Nick Rima playing his old club, only 2 weeks removed from moving over there to the Warriors, and the Warriors have been going great guns ever since he's got there. He's played probably his best footy of the season. Well, without a doubt, his best footy of the season in those couple of games for the Warriors. And I mentioned that sometimes all it takes is, a bit of a change of scenery, a bit of a new coach and a new team for a player to blossom. And maybe that's happened. It's too early to probably tell now. In terms of the rosters here, I think they're pretty evenly matched, to be honest. The Warriors have showed that they've been able to play fairly consistently this year. It's not really been the Warriors of old. The Broncos, on the other hand, obviously are coming off their biggest win of the season by far, and they're coming off 2 straight wins. Well, both teams are, actually. And will the Broncos be let down after that Roosters win? Maybe. Probably not. It was a pretty brutal game. It was a tough, hard-fought game. The bodies will be sore after that, but I don't think they're going to be let down with only, 4 wins out of 10 on the season. But the thing is, this Warriors side has some confidence about them now. I think Nick Rima is going to step up. I think they're playing well together, this Warriors side, and they've been putting in more consistent performances on the season than this Broncos team has. So if you're asking me, are these teams fairly evenly matched? I'd say probably yes. Is the line reflecting that the Broncos are a better team than the Warriors? Well, yes, it is, because the line should be 2.5, but it's not. It's 1.5 to pick them. And if you ask me, do I trust this Warriors side a bit more to put in a solid effort? Years past, I probably would have said no. This year, I'm going to say yes. So we're certainly leaning to the Warriors at this point. Just haven't pulled the trigger on any best bets yet.
Even last year, the Warriors were more consistent than years past and made the finals. And these are 2 teams that I probably want to bet on. I like both these teams and I like the way they're playing. And obviously, we bet on both these teams last week when a lot of people wouldn't have. And we went 7-0 on our best bets on both these teams. So they're in our good books for sure. And I like both sides. And you look at Brisbane, they've won 3 of their last 4. But all 3 at home, at home to a depleted Cronulla, at home to Manly in that magic round. Shouldn't have been a home game, but it was played at Suncorp.
True.
And obviously at home to the Roosters. So can they take it on the road? That's going to be interesting to see. The Warriors, playing at Rarotonga Martin Smart Stadium, they come into the game without Ignatius Parsi, who's probably been one of their best forwards. So that is a bit of a hesitation there, taking the Warriors. But when you can bring Adam Blair back in, he's a sketchy player, but that's not a bad guy to come back in, and Bunty Afoa gets a start. Broncos are 1-17, the same team that did upset the Roosters, with James Roberts still in the wilderness of the reserve. So I'm not sure, because obviously Origin gets picked after this weekend. Obviously he's done something wrong there, because his form wasn't glaringly bad to me. I'm not sure if he even gets an opportunity. The fact that they won last week, maybe not. And to me, this is going to be such a contrast of styles, because I love both teams, but they're very different. Brisbane
100%.
has one of the best forward packs in the comp, and many people want to recognise that. But you've got many players in that team that are also in the mix for Origin. Offengawi, I think, will play for Queensland. You have Pangai Jr., who took his hat out of the ring for New South Wales, but and another for Queensland as well is David Fafita. And on the New South Wales side, Pangai Jr. is an Origin level kind of player. And obviously Payne Haas, who's only started, I think, 9 first grade games, but was man of the match last week. He's in the mix.
He's a monster. And
Matt Lodge, who actually doesn't let you down. He's not a popular name. And whether he would get picked or whether they prefer to go a different direction. But these are all, it's a loaded forward pack. On the other hand, the Warriors have a loaded back line. So, and they're big outside backs that help them start sets, can actually help them just even up that tussle in the forwards. So fascinated to see how this one goes. And I agree with you. If I have to pick the winner right now, I'm leaning to the Warriors, but nothing that we can see in the betting markets is strong enough that we feel wins 60% or more yet. So we haven't got a best bet as of yet.
Yeah, and when the line's 1.5 like that, it's kind of an awkward sort of number. So we figured, most of the time we only give out best bets on the pod if we don't think they'll be there tomorrow. We think most of those Warriors players will probably be there tomorrow, so we've left it for now. Next up, we've got the Rabbits laying 8.5 points, hosting the Tigers. 43.5 is the total. In what should be a fairly entertaining game as well. I mean, the Rabbits going for 7 straight wins, which, some people may have seen at the start of the season, but I don't think many people could have seen that the Rabbitohs would arguably be playing the best footy in the comp at the moment, bar the Roosters. I mean, some could argue that the Rabbits have played better footy in the last 6 weeks than the Roosters have, or at least more consistently. But the halves are playing great. The forwards are rolling on the back of the Burgess brothers. Cody Walker, obviously, has got to be, his name is in the hat for Origin for sure. He's been playing fantastic. I mean, he is scoring every fucking game. And I know it seems weird, like people are putting up every single week, Cody Walker to score a try this week, at so-and-so odds. People say he can't do it again, just every single week. And Reynolds has had a resurgence as well. So, I mean, this Rabbits side, without a doubt, is playing one of the best footy in the comp. However, everyone knows this. We've seen that the Rabbits have obliterated people, bar the Raiders, obviously, but the Raiders are a very solid team. For the past 6 weeks, the Rabbits have been playing fantastic football, and it's reflected in the line here. I mean, this Tigers side is an average, if not slightly above average team. But this Rabbits team is laying 8.5 points. I understand that it's at home, but you can't really give a full 2.5 for 2 Sydney teams that are playing each other. The Tigers are coming off what is a pretty disappointing loss for them against the Storm, where they should have won. I think if they did win that game, this line would be probably closer to 6.5, coming off a win against the Storm, for sure. But I don't think they'll be too down on themselves for that. They're still well in the hunt for the 8. They've got 2 extra days prep for this one. The only concern that I have with the Tigers, and I do like them, the only concern that I do have is it is tough if you're a side that's, not a great side. If you're a middling side, it is very, very tough to put in 2 great performances away from home as big underdogs. And that's what we're going to need from the Tigers here. But they're the kind of team that can get into the grind and do it, I think.
Yeah, the Tigers are a team, as we said, last week. They're a side you actually have to respect. And you look at both these sides, they played close games in round 10. And the Tigers, deserved to win and lost. The Rabbitohs could have easily lost, but they won. So those final scores maybe flatter, the line, or at least push the line a little bit in the Rabbitohs' direction.
Agreed.
The Bunnies unchanged their roster, but let's not forget Kyle Turner had a broken toe last week in training, and they had to make a late change and moved another back rower into the centres in Ethan Lowe. And Alex Johnson is still out. So they actually are getting thin in their outside backs. The Tigers have dropped Fanua, Momirovski comes in. So that's not a big change to me. The Tigers, with a 9-day turnaround, yes, they'll be disappointed off the Storm game, but I feel that has to be an advantage to get 9 days for this game compared to the Rabbitohs. 7-day turnaround is fine, but we spoke about the physicality and the finals like intensity of that Raiders game. That does make me think that the Rabbitohs, have been so consistent this season. This could be the kind of game where they do have a letdown. It's just very hard to bring it every single week. Now, why are they winning every single week? I mean, there's lots of reasons. Bennett's done a great job. They're defending well. But it's like Damien Cook, Adam Reynolds, Cody Walker, Sam Burgess, every week having massive performances.
Yep.
And people might say, oh, Walker will definitely want to carve up, to get an Origin jersey, and it's Indigenous round and he captained the Indigenous side. I'm telling you now, he can't play any better than he has played. And that's a compliment to him. He has played unreal for 10 rounds. So I can't be scared that Walker will take it to another level because he already is on that level. I still think this is too many points for a Tigers side that needs to be respected a little bit more in the betting market. And we just had to pull the trigger on the Tigers with the value we're getting here.
And we have pulled the trigger. We got 5 best bets on this one. First up, we're taking the Tigers plus 8.5 points for the game. That one is $1.83 on Sportsbet. Go to the other markets because I think it's a few cents higher than if you just go to the regular line in the regular market. I think other markets is right down the bottom if you scroll down on Sportsbet. We're taking Tigers plus 4.5 points in the first half and in the second half. Those are both on Sportsbet. First half is $1.84, second half is $1.85. We're taking the race to 30 neither, so neither team to reach 30 points. That one's $1.82 on Sportsbet. And we're going to take the Rabbitohs team total under 4.5 tries. That one is $1.88 in the Sportsbet alt market. So go to the alt market, you'll get a few more cents for yourself there as well. All those cents add up at the end of the season, that's for sure. So it's worth taking a little bit of time to shop around, but you don't have to. We've done that for you. Next up, the Bulldogs plus 8.5 points hosting the Storm. 41.5 is the total. The Storm aren't going to lose this game. I know that people are going to say, oh, the Bulldogs stretched them to the limits last time they played. What was it? Round 4. Where the Dogs were up 12-0, I think, at half-time, something like that. Maybe the Storm scored just before half. Whatever it was, the Bulldogs were up at half-time, and the Storm come back and seal a late victory, 18-16, in the dying seconds. The Bulldogs aren't that good. I'm going to say it again, they are still, in my eyes, the worst team in the comp. Now they've lost Ockenbar, who's been actually quietly a beast for them in recent weeks. And this Storm team is not going to take them lightly, that's for sure. They know what happened last time. This Storm team is not going to get down into a hole against this Bulldog side. Not only that, they had a scare against the Dogs in round 4. They had a scare last week against the Tigers where they probably should have lost as well. I expect full effort for a full 80 minutes from this Storm side. I guess the only change, Jerome Hughes is back. And unfortunately for the viewers, I guess, or for rugby fans out there, Pappenhausen's out. And God, he was fun to watch, to be honest. Like he very much reminded me of Slater in the way that he sort of ran the ball so hard, was carving up. I thought he's very good. And I'm sure that if they decide Jerome Hughes is the long-term fullback there, he will find another side and he will be very good, that's for sure. But I really do think the Storm carve up in this one and it could be a blowout.
Well, speaking about Pappenhausen, that is an important thing to highlight because a lot of people really like the look of Pappenhausen anytime try scorer, and he has scored his last 2 games. So be aware that he's on the bench for this one, and if they're still going to offer you, $2 something, it isn't great value for a guy off the bench. No. Not saying he won't score, but he's not the starting fullback. If he does cement his spot there, maybe Jerome Hughes moves into the halves as he did play last year at certain stages. There's pressure on Croft. It's pressure on the Storm. As you said, they could have easily lost to Tigers. We know what they can do because we saw them put 64 on the Eels, but they've been struggling for consistency, and that's why I just want no part of the Dogs in this one, because you can say, look, the Dogs lost by 2 points at Amy Park. This game's at Belmore, so they're going to have the confidence they can match it with the Storm. But you can also say they're going to get the Storm's full attention in this one.
100%.
And the Storm have also lost Christian Welch, and I actually would have had him in the Queensland team, but luckily the knee injury wasn't as bad as first thought. But they are still far too strong. Now, look, the Dogs have looked a lot better since Foran's come back, and you have to be impressed with the comeback victory. I don't want to take much away from them and say it's all the Titans capitulating, but that was a big part of it. But it was a good fight back, and they fought back the week before against Knights when they were down 16-0 too. And they are a tough side, but there's still just too much of a disparity in talent in this one. I don't like betting on a team plus the points unless I believe they have a chance to win. And even though what we've seen this year, and we've seen the Dogs pull upsets and we've seen the Storm be inconsistent, I'd be very surprised if the Storm lost this game. So for me, it'd be Storm or nothing, but at -8.5 moving to -10. it doesn't feel quite good enough value for me to take the Storm either. So I don't think we've got a best bet on this game as of yet.
We do have one, in fact. We're going to make ourselves a mechanical Storm -8. It ends up being $1.
That's right. Like I said, I wouldn't want to lay 8.5, but that's right. We were able to get -8, which means, I guess, if they win by 8, we get our money back, and if they win by less than 8, well, that would mean the Dogs keep it a little closer than we expect.
Yeah, 100%. Let me just see. Someone's saying that these lines are changing instantly. Holy fuck, they are actually. But, okay, Storm are now...
Which bet's this?
This is Storm, but Storm are now -10 on 365, but someone's already commenting that they're $1.90 at -8.5 on BetEasy. So just look around, honestly.
That's where it was. It was on BetEasy, or maybe on both of them.
There was both of them anyway, but 8.5 was in many places, and if not, you can get 9.5. It's exactly the same bet, essentially. So anyway, we're taking the Storm -8 mechanically at $1.81. We're going to do it by putting 95% of our stake on the Storm -8.5 at $1.90. Was on 365, obviously now it's on BetEasy or wherever you can find it. You'll find it somewhere. And 5% of our stake on Storm by exactly 8 points at $17. Probably should have had a few more bets on that. It seems like the line is climbing. Then the late Sunday game, we've got the Dragons at Pick'em against the Sharks. 39.5 is the total. It's a funny one for me. We chatted about this one earlier today, obviously when we were going through our best bets. I didn't have a huge lean on the game. But Jacob kind of talked me around. I think you were right. You know, if you look at these two teams on paper, they are probably fairly similar. I know that the Dragons have lost four games in a row. But in saying that, you look at their rosters and the Sharks are still relatively depleted. I know that they might get Moylan back, but you could argue that they're fairly similar. But who do I trust more to put in a good effort? I think you're right. It is the Sharks. They have put in week after week, and I know that they lost to Manly last week, but Manly played a great game. But the Dragons might just be toast for the year. I mean, this is 4 in a row, and we've been saying, for probably the last 3 weeks that this Dragon side probably, at least has the talent and the roster to be bouncing back from these spots, but they haven't been. And to lose in that fashion to a Knights team, that might just be, their mentality that the season is over and we're cooked and we're not making the 8 and the season's done for us. Whereas this Sharks side, I think, still believes that they can be in contention here. Are they in the top 8 now? I think they still are. They're getting troops back. They might get Moylan back this week. And if they do, I think the Sharks will start favourites. But at the moment, they're slight underdogs, and we've got a couple of bets that reflect that before, maybe Moylan gets named. Maybe he doesn't. But even if he doesn't, they might even start favourites in this one.
Yeah, I mean, any team that loses 3 games in a row, you think that's when you're going to rally, and then you lose by
100%.
40 in the 4th game. That's the thing. If the Dragons show up for this one, they are at home, then it should be a pretty even game and the odds makers probably have it right. But this Sharks team shows up every week, and I know that they lost on Sunday, but if you watch that, look, they mounted a lot of pressure. They conceded 2 different tries off bombs they couldn't handle, and they lacked a bit of class in attack. And I actually think Matt Moylan's going to be a better than 50-50 chance to come back into this team, just because when he had that hammy injury, his originally expectation date to come back was a couple of weeks ago. He's in the reserves here. I think they can draft him in. I'd expect that if he did come back in, he may play fullback and they could swing Dugan to the wing. Maybe he comes in to 5'8", where they've got Flano's son playing there, but that would give them a lift, and it would probably, as you said, shift the Sharks into favouritism, which is why it's worth playing the Sharks now, because the Sharks are a team that turns up every week. Now, for the Dragons, in terms of personnel, Corbin Sims will help, because when they win, it starts with their forwards. I've spoken about how Ben Hunt can't do shit with no classy halves pair, because obviously they're missing Norman and Widdop. Yes. And let's not forget DeBellin, was part of this team that was so good last year for most of the season. They're missing a lot of key guys. The forwards have to get on top. So Corbin Sims back from the broken arm helps, but they've dropped Dufty, they've dropped Ravalawa. I just wonder if it's desperation at this point, because I just don't know how confident this Dragons team is, but I do know that this Sharks team comes in fierce. And one of my concerns with the Sharks has been Fafita's playing with a bit of a bad hammy, Pry's got the bad shoulder, but they're getting through games. So at this point, it's less of a risk that they're not ready to go because they've proven it. So I kind of have to lean to the Sharks in this one, and that's why we've had to jump on a couple of best bets.
Yeah, and it's a weird one. I guess you can go either way with it, or people can kind of think either way about it when you make sweeping changes to a team, especially if they've just lost 4 in a row. it can go either way. And one of the ways it goes is, the team galvanizes. They say this is enough's enough. People are put on notice, getting dropped, and the team shows up and has a great performance. But the other thing that it can do is the team just gives up. And not only that, people are getting dropped so you don't have your full strength side, but people are playing out of position as well. And the chemistry isn't there and that sort of thing.
And that is why, what did I say to you? This game reminds me a little bit like the Panthers-Warriors game last week, where it's like, the Panthers are at home, they've dropped a few guys, they're going to be like so desperate because all the players are on notice, but it can go the other way. And I'm not saying any guarantee that's what's going to happen, because one of the hardest parts about what we do is trying to predict a mentality of a team. But it wouldn't surprise me. I don't think it would surprise too many people if the Dragons are under par again on Sunday.
100%. And I guess the funny thing, the difference was that we were catching 2.5 with the Warriors, whereas this one's just 1.5. If Sharks were 2.5, it would be a slam dunk. But I do like the plays that we have currently, and we have 2 of them. We're taking the hook in the first half. We're taking Sharks plus half a point in the first half. That one's $1.80 on Sportsbet. And we're taking the Sharks plus 1.5 points for the game. That one is $1.87 on Sportsbet in the pick your own line market. I will just add one thing. Obviously, we just give out the best prices that we can find in the market. But if you are looking to play the Sharks, plus 1.5 for the game or whatever, you might look at doing it on a site like Bet365, where if it does go into extra time, that bet automatically wins if you have Sharks plus 1.5. No matter if they lose in extra time or win, that bet will win. So, you can shop around and maybe give up a few extra cents to get that extra, that extra safety if it does go.
Or like, we never play a promo as a best bet, but that Sportsbet, if they've still got that, lead by 6 at half time or something.
Only Thursday, Friday games.
Oh, okay, never mind. But if there's ever any promos out there, or even, as we say, there's a chance the Dragons fold. So maybe you just look at Sharks to win straight up if you're getting a good, $2 plus odds on that. So you don't have to play our best bets as gospel. Obviously, only play the ones you agree with to begin with. That's all 8 games, isn't it? I feel like we've gone a little extra time, but off probably our best round of the season last week. I guess maybe the confidence is up, and we're just absolutely loving the footy at the moment, and we've got a lot of info that we want to share, and hopefully it is worthwhile to punters out there, and the results, at least recently, showing that it is. And huge round with players jostling for Origin spots, so that's going to be exciting. As we said before, our Origin selections pod, just 15 minutes, talk about who we believe should be the strongest sides for Queensland, New South Wales. That'll be Friday. And then we'll be back on Sunday to recap it all too, 6 p.m.
Indeed. Last things, make sure you're in our group, Tripod Punters Tips Forum on Facebook. There should be a link in the description to this video or in the show notes on YouTube or in our podcast. And get in the Tripod app. It's free to download. We'll be posting all of these best bets that we've just gone through on the pod. We'll be posting them tomorrow at about lunchtime, along with any other best bets that we add for the weekend. But that'll do it, guys. We'll see you at Friday on this page, 5 o'clock. To go through, who we would select for Origin. Agree, disagree, you guys can leave some comments about who you would pick as well. But Friday, 5 p.m, we'll see you then.
Cheers, lads.